What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this, much like the other day, little blip that I'm going to film, throw in here before the airing of today's episode of Renegades Reviews. Um, it appears as if I'm going to be trying to do one of these now every time a famous actor or actress passes away, because I feel like if I only do them for the people that I really, really admire, like I did the other day for Destin, I feel like I'm not being fair to the other actors and actresses whose time comes. This morning, we were informed via the news media that Christopher Plummer has passed away. Full name Arthur Christopher Orm Plummer, born December 13th, 1929, until February 5th, 2021. I mean, the man's career spanned 7 decades. You've got to acknowledge that. He made his movie debut in 1958's Starstruck, but it was the role of Captain Georg von Trapp in The Sound of Music in 1965, which made him a star and a household name, playing alongside Julie Andrews, of course, in that film. Now, I'm sure I'll review Sound of Music at some point on Renegades Reviews, so I don't want to go too deep into it here. I will say it's been a long time since I've watched it, and I remember being bored by it. I've never really been huge on musicals. Disney movies, the obvious exception. And then there's a few others in there, The Wizard of Oz, Yankee Doodle Dandy. There's a few musicals here and there that I do enjoy. But overall, I've never been a big musical guy, and especially the Rodgers and Hammerstein type musicals, Sound of Music, Oklahoma, South Pacific, etc. Never been into that stuff. But I'm sure eventually I'm going to have to do a musicals month, and I will get to it then and give it another full fair chance. But like I said, Sound of Music is what made him a star, made him a household name alongside, acting alongside Julie Andrews in that role, who was already big, having been Mary Poppins the year prior. He's also done some voice work over the years. He did a voice for An American Tail, the story of Fievel back from the mid-'80s. He was a voice in the 1990s animated movie Rockadoodle. And he would probably be best known for his voice work from the Pixar film Up, where he portrayed Charles Muntz, the foil for Carl. The man who Carl admired for years, wanting to be just like, only to find out that he was the villain in the end. Spoiler alert if you've never seen it, but the movie's like at least 10 years old. Like, it is what it is at this point. We here at Renegades Reviews actually just recently covered a film that he was in the 80s during Tom Hanks month, as he was the Reverend Jonathan Worley in Dragnet, alongside Tom Hanks, obviously, Dan Aykroyd, Alexandra Paul, Dabney Coleman, etc. The 1990s were a really big year for him. Like, he almost had a career resurgence, if you will. He was in Rockadoodle, which I had previously mentioned, which came out in 1991 brought us Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which he was in. 1992, Malcolm X alongside Denzel Washington. Wolf alongside Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer. Dolores Claiborne, the adaptation of the Stephen King novel. And 12 Monkeys alongside Bruce Willis. Some pretty big movies there in the 90s that he was featured in. If I'm being 100% honest with you, the only movie out of those I have actually seen is Star Trek 6. Some of you may be wondering why Malcolm X is not on the docket for Black History Month this month. Number one, I don't own it yet. And number two, got to save some stuff for future Februaries for Black History Month. I can't give all the heavy hitter stuff the first time around. Got to try and save some content for next year. I know it's 365 days away, but got to be prepared. Over his illustrious career, I think the movies that I personally will remember him for, obviously Dragnet. Like I mentioned when we did Tom Hanks Month, that was one of my first big Tom Hanks movies that was considered a favorite of mine, alongside Big. Um, National Treasure, where he had a very, very small part in the very beginning as John Adams Gates, Nick Cage's grandfather, telling him the story of the Knights Templar. As I mentioned previously, the role in Up. Again, Up, I don't dislike Up, but so many people hyped to me the opening 10 minutes, the Carl and Ellie love story, that I didn't feel like it really delivered on all the hype that I had heard. So I don't hold it in as high of a regard as some people out there. Again, eventually I'm going to do a Pixar month, so I will rewatch it then without all the hype going on around me. Clean slate, fresh eyes. It's probably been a good 5 years since I've watched it anyways. So I'll be able to revisit it in a different light, if you will, and maybe I'll have a different opinion of it. And the last film that I will remember him for is actually the last film I saw him in. You guys may remember in December on Dad's on Wrestling, not always on wrestling, excuse me, Dad's not always on wrestling. Jeff and I did our top 10 Christmas films. And I believe it came in at either number 10 or number 9 for me. I don't remember which. But I discussed the film The Man Who Invented Christmas, which was the story of how Charles Dickens came up with A Christmas Carol. Dan Stevens, who had been the live action Beast, portrayed Charles Dickens, and Christopher Plummer was his Scrooge. As Dickens would come up with the story and the details and base the story off of interactions, because from all accounts, Dickens was a man who visualized his books like coming to life in front of him in order to write the details. So as he was visualizing and coming up with the persona of what would become the Ebenezer Scrooge that Reginald Owen, Alistair Sim, Patrick Stewart, Michael Caine, etc., etc., have all portrayed very differently and beautifully over the years, Christopher Plummer was portraying his template for Scrooge. So if you haven't seen that film yet, I definitely recommend that you should get out there and give it a chance. Now, you never know, it may just become one of your new favorite films. As always, we here at Renegades Reviews would like to send our support and condolences to Christopher's family, friends, and colleagues during this rough time. That's going to wrap it up for this. Thank you for joining me very briefly here before we get into Brown Sugar at the top of the hour here on Renegades Reviews, as we continue our chick flicks, love stories, rom-coms, whatever you want to call them as. We're almost to the halfway mark. of the first theme of the month. So thank you for watching. Make sure you stay tuned for Brown Sugar, like I said, coming up at the top of the hour. I'm the Renegade JJ Williams, and I'll see you next time.